Hi and welcome to variation 15. This variation is about fast upbow jetés combined with spiccato. We're going to start slowly because the movement you need to be able to do is best to practice slowly first. We're going to start with upbows very slowly at the frog, an active movement of your hand and particularly the fingers, and it's a circular movement because you're doing upbows. I described this in detail in variation 1 and 4, but I'll go over it with you again because that's what you need for this variation. So start off, upbows. That's basically the active, slow version of what we're going to do fast later on. Now, to speed up, you move away from the frog slightly, and your movement of your hand and fingers becomes smaller. It's still active though. As you speed up further, you move away further from the frog and you let the bow do some of the action itself by dropping it onto the string. And remember, it comes back up on its own, so you don't need to do anything for the bow to leave the string again. That will be this. Notice that the movement I'm doing with my hands and fingers is exactly the same. It's just a lot smaller and no longer as active. And you can speed it up further, go towards the middle. That's an even smaller movement from your fingers and an even more passive movement. You're letting the bow do more on its own. That's basically what you need for this variation. So the best way to start off is just like I just demonstrated on one note. Start with very, very active fingers directing the bow, and then speed up. This, the bow is more or less doing on its own. I'm just reacting and making sure I'm doing a circular motion because you need the bow to stay in one place. You can't do the upbow like that because then you can't continue. You have to stay in one place for this variation. Now, before you start practicing the variation, it's a good idea to practice a combination of spiccato with the upbows on one note and then on scales because it'll make it a lot easier for then actually practicing the variation. So start slowly. Spiccato, and then combine it with the upbows. If you find that complicated or difficult, then just go down to an even slower speed. That's slow enough for you to definitely be able to do it. And when you can do that, then speed it up a little bit. And then speed it up further. That's already almost the speed that you need for the variation. Remember, as you speed up, to move away from the frog towards the middle. Remember to let the bow do more of the work on its own and just let your fingers react passively to what the bow is doing. Now, when I practice this variation, I always start with a very slow speed right at the frog with very active finger movement because it's just excellent training for the fingers of your right hand, and it's very, very helpful to practice this variation extremely slowly. So I always start like this. I always start like that. And then what I actually do is the same as in the preparatory exercises. I speed it up slightly by moving away from the frog a little bit. That's still a completely active movement from your fingers. So when you can do that, you can speed up further, move away from the frog. As from this speed, it becomes a half passive movement already, because you're letting the bow drop, you're letting it drop, and you're also letting it do the bouncing of the spiccato on its own, and your fingers are starting to only react. Remember to stay in one place with the up bows. That's why you're doing the circular movement, because otherwise you'll lose your place where the spiccato works best for the speed that you're doing. And when you can do that, you can speed it up even further. Move away from the frog and let the bow do most of the work on its own, and your finger movement becomes very, very small and very passive. One really does feel that the bow is doing it all, and one's just directing the direction which the bow is supposed to move, whether you're going backwards and forwards for the spiccato or whether you're repeating the up bows with a circular motion. Now when you get to the bit with the 16th notes where you have more spiccato, don't worry about that. It is exactly the same, except that you have more spiccato notes. That's this bit. If you find that difficult, then build it up slowly again. And then, as with the others, move away from the frog as you speed up. Another thing you might want to bear in mind if you're having troubles, experiment with the position of your elbow. There is no fixed position for the elbow. The elbow has a functional position, which means that it needs the position where the bowing functions best. And that's different for everybody because it depends on the length of your arm and the shape of your hand and fingers. So what you can do if you're having troubles, make sure your elbow is not too high, because that won't work, because you'll be stiff in this area. And make sure it's not too low. Same reason, you won't be completely free. So find something where you can, where your hand can hang a little bit, so your wrist should be higher than your hand and your elbow should be lower than your wrist. I'll show you from this angle. And you have quite a bit of possibilities within that. So you might want to experiment a little bit with the position of your elbow as well.